Hello my lovely humans, this is FCA, welcome back to my channel. Today we're having a little bit of a dark topic that I'm going to try to really make about the shadiness of the Massachusetts Police Department. It's been crazy for my life, but not as crazy as what's been happening in the Massachusetts Boston Police Department. Before we get super into it, there are dark topics and dark things that are going to be discussed here, not only unaliving but also self-unaliving. And if you are triggered by that, if you are in a dark spot, you may want to just pass on this one. But if you want to continue watching at your own discretion, there I will link below. You can always text or call 988. That is a crisis prevention hotline. It is free, it is safe. You can have somebody to talk to if things are just really heavy and rough for yourself, if you're having some no future plan ideations happening, because I want you here, and give it a call. If you're like, I only got one action left in me, make it text or call 988. So yeah, it's a hard topic, it's a heavy topic. Let me recollect myself and we'll get into it. So I've made a lot of shorts and covering tidbits of the Karen Read trial. Karen Read is a woman from Canton, Massachusetts, who has been accused of unaliving her Boston police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe, by backing into him with her car while she was intoxicated and leaving him in the snow to perish. The defense of Karen Read says that's not what happened at all, that there has been a cover-up to pin the passing away of John O'Keefe on Karen Read, because Karen Read was an outsider, and the lawn where John O'Keefe's body was found was another police officer, Officer Albert. There was another investigator who was friends with the lead investigator on the case, another Albert, and Trooper Proctor. Trooper Michael Proctor on the stand said that he really didn't know the Alberts, even though there was like, oh, you guys are just in each other's weddings, you guys are on vacation together. And the officer who had recused himself because of connections, the other Albert, he and Trooper Proctor tried to say, I know of him, but we don't really know each other. Meanwhile, they were hitting the gym regularly together, having some drinks together. There was a text message exchange where that Albert said, hey, I think I left my piece in your car. Can you drop it off in my mailbox? It's like, but you don't know each other very well, right? And the sus is just beginning. The defense has claimed that the Alberts and their relatives, good friends, the McCabe's, were also involved in the passing of John O'Keefe because he went to go party with them, was in their house, something happened in the Alberts' house, and then he was taken outside and left to perish. There's been a lot of sus things, a lot of sus text messages, and in the Karen Read trial, the Alberts and the McCabe's, these people are having butt dials. Oh no, we never actually called. We never called. I never answered a call. I never made a call. They're all just thousands of butt dials. And they also all their phones have just disappeared. Either, oh yeah, right before this investigation was going to take my phone to look at it, I got my iPhone updated. I lost my phone. My phone broke. It's just a whole bunch of, oh really? That's funny. And then one particular character, Jen McCabe, who seems to be a little bit, this is just speculation on my part, I did not like her, just so we all know, who's kind of the ringleader of this little thing. She had a very suspicious text message. Either it was very early in the morning, there is a debate about whether it happened at one time or the other, that said, how long to die in cold, or how long does it take to die in the cold, with some typing errors. So, the jury's supposed to take from that what they will. The injuries of John O'Keefe were that he had a blunt force trauma wound to his head and some interesting marks on his arm. Now, multiple professionals in the Karen Reed trial said that those marks were consistent with animal bite, animal attack wounds. Specifically, it looked like they were from a large dog. Now, you can't tell what breed just by the bite or by a mark, but they were like, it's consistent with a large animal, presumably a dog, attack or a bite. And the Alberts used to have a German Shepherd who we know right before this trial and before all this, after, just shortly after John O'Keefe's passing, they rehomed their dog to Vermont. Like, that's what everyone does with their pet of 7 years. It's just like, oh, this thing happened and there are some consistent animal wounds. Well, we don't know what to do about that because our dog's now in Vermont. But what is connecting the more susness of the Massachusetts Boston Police Department is that Trooper Proctor, less than 24 hours into the investigation, just, and it was a shoddy investigation, okay? They were using a leaf blower to blow away snow and collecting evidence, blood evidence, in solo cups. And the victims and their families deserve a better investigation than that. But less than 24 hours, he was like, yep, Karen Reed struck the man. Check it off the list. Another one solved, boys. Let's go get a cold one. His text messages also reveal some really disgusting things, calling Karen Reed the C word, calling her a whack job, making some inappropriate comments about her medical conditions that she had. But also, when texting outsiders about the case, something they're not supposed to do, Trooper Proctor also said something to the effect of that the homeowner wasn't going to catch anything for the death because, he's a Boston police officer too. Trooper Proctor has since been relieved of his duty and of his job entirely, which I think is only going to bolster the defense for Karen Reed. Now, there is a crossover between the Karen Reed trial and this next trial we're going to talk about, which is Sandra Birchmore. Sandra Birchmore is a 23-year-old woman who was found unalived in her apartment. And again, a short time, very little investigation was done. She was declared to have unalived herself, and the medical examiner was like, yes, I'm not going to do a whole lot of investigating and examining. She did it to herself. Same medical examiner, because it's also from the Canton police force. The connection there. It's from the same town, city, ship, nest as Karen Reed, where he was like, yeah, this man was struck by a car. Sure, his body doesn't have any broken bones or contusions or bruising or swelling that are consistent with being hit by a car, but yeah, that's definitely what happened here. I will say that they are actually the Stoughton police officers. I'm not sure what the county divyship is of that, but they are, from Canton related-ish. I'm not a professional, I'm just an observer who's sharing some stuff. Now, not only is this like, yeah, these things, some of these wounds and stuff aren't consistent, but it's also the psychological things that were observed also were not consistent with somebody who was unaliving themselves. First of all, she was found mid-laundry, a load in the washer, mid-folding of her dried laundry, load in the dryer. That is not something that people who are in a dark spot do. If you've ever been in those very depressed moments, or have known people who have been in them, it's hard. Getting up is a monumental task. Getting dressed in any clothes is a monumental task. Changing clothes, taking a shower, those things are not easy for people who are in a unaliving ideation state of mind, because they don't see the point. There's no point of making future plans. There's no point of doing laundry, and they don't have the mental or physical energy to do those things. It's just too much. It's like, the barest of bare minimum, less than bare minimum, is what they can put out a lot of times. They're just too exhausted from the mental pain, from the physical things. It's just too much. So someone mid laundry, not the typical time where somebody's like, yeah, I'm gonna do it now. Not saying it's impossible. We all process grief and stress and strain differently. The chances are not zero. It's just really inconsistent and unlikely. But not only that, I said she was pregnant with a police officer's child, Matthew Farwell, who has been indicted for Sandra's passing. And what has led to this is that she knew him since she was 12 years old, and there is alleged grooming that took place because there is text message evidence between the two of them that they have had physical relations since she was 15, and in Massachusetts the age of consent is 16. Now you can decide, the statutoriness of it all, but either way, he was not like minor. You should not be doing stuff, and he was already on the police force. I think it said that he was 27 when they met, but don't quote me on that. I might have that thing wrong. And that he was having these physical relations with a minor, whether it was statutory or not, while he was on duty, in his police vehicle while he was on duty. That he has messages saying, "Oh, I'm going to be, shirking his duties. Like I'm gonna pop out of work. I got something to do, whatever and what have you." And then Sandra Birchmore gets pregnant, and she was really excited. She was making future plans, not something somebody in a dark state of mind does. She wanted to become a nurse, so she's, getting in classes. She had a job. She's planning on showing up to her job. She had other plans with friends and family. She was actively creating a nursery and gathering things for a nursery. She had doctor's appointments planned. Just not things that are, again, indicative of somebody who's planning on not having a future. And it's pretty devious, like in a gross kind of way, because not only because Sandra Birchmore was a minor, but also because he was using her to act out his personal fantasies, allegedly doing stuff like punishing her with intimacy acts that maybe she wasn't completely down with, for bad grades, if she lied to him, or if she, was doing stuff with other people, maybe her age. Oh, did I mention that Matthew Farwell, the police officer, was already married? And actually, the day after Birchmore's passing, his wife had their third child. And apparently, there was some anger over Birchmore being pregnant because in some text messages exchanged exposed by the feds, it seems that Matthew Farwell, the defendant and alleged assailant, that but again, he was using her for his like little fantasies and pleasures, but she wanted to have a baby. She wanted, as she got older and was becoming an adult, she was like, "I want your name on the birth certificate. I want you involved." And it seems there was a lot of stress with Matthew Farwell because with his wife being pregnant and Birchmore being pregnant, his DNA is going to be there if his name's on a birth certificate. He was concerned about how he was going to support two families, and adding a child into the mix makes things a lot more complicated. And that's not what he wanted. And it seems that he was mad and he was angry and losing his temper. And then he took it out and decided that he was going to solve his problems by not having a child or a Birchmore. Birchmore had also called and sent text message to friends indicating like that she had told people that she was in a relation with Matthew Farewell, and that he was starting to frighten her, that they were getting into fights, that he was, physically throwing things, taking things out of her hands, and that he had said things like that he, Matthew Farrell, wished that Birchmore would just, because it would make everything easier. Where Farewell was also mad that when he found out that Birchmore had told a friend, looking for a confidant, looking for support where he was not doing it, that they knew about stuff. And he blamed that on Birchmore through the text messages. And again, it was a really quick thing. Yep, she did it to herself when the police officers looked at it. It went just unnoticed for a long time. In fact, the only reason that this got investigated further was because Sandra Birchmore's family got and hired their own pathologist to look at her body, and they were like, no, she didn't do this to herself. Someone did this to her. And then the crossover between the two is that the person who was doing the data collection from the police officer's department is Nicholas Gorino. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I apologize, sort of, if it's wrong. But he was the one who collected data, and he told falsehoods and was caught in falsehoods in the Karen Reed trial. And he also reported wrong, saying, no, there's nothing sus in these text messages. And it's like, what about all that other stuff that I just talked about? Like, what do you mean? Before that investigation happens, Matthew Farewell, his twin brother, who's also a Stoughton police officer, and Robert Devine, who is, hold on, their supervisor. I wanted to double check that I got that title correct. All resigned before the investigation, and also all three were a part of the Explorers program where Birchmore entered at 12 years old, and all allegedly had exchanges of intimacy with Birchmore, but it seems her most regular and committed person was Matthew Farewell. So the sus just keeps adding up. You have police officers, Trooper Proctor, this lead investigator, talking to people outside of the case about it, saying rude and despicable things about a person instead of doing a proper investigation. You have data exchanges being lied to by one of the officers. You have officers engaging in inappropriate relations with a minor, and then getting involved in the cover-up of her manner of passing. And what's really frustrating about this is that while the highlight is on the Boston, Massachusetts, Canton area police forces, we know those aren't isolated, right? Because we've seen, police brutality, police cover-ups, misinformation, and it's kind of, we all know it's an open secret that the police departments don't investigate their own, or at least that's not their first place that they go to as a sort of a bro code, if you will. And it's sad that in order for this investigation to even take off, Sandra Birchmore's family had to hire, which is not cheap, their own pathologist to look at her and go, yeah, no, these medical findings are not correct. And not everybody has those finances. Not everybody has access to those resources. In fact, I believe that the forensic pathologist that they hired was somebody that they were familiar with. I don't think that he was related to them, but it was someone they were familiar with. And not everybody has those resources or connections or the affordability to have somebody else look at the body of their loved one and not just go with whatever the police say, because we're supposed to trust the police. They're trying to tell us that they're like, you need to trust the police. We need to give them money. We need to make sure that they're supported. That way they can support us and all these things. But then you have these situations where you're like, you're not trustworthy. You were doing wrong things with the wrong people. You're cheating on your spouse, um, doing stuff with a child, and saying things that, but calling because Karen Reed is a victim in it because she lost her loved one, and people argue, oh well, they weren't on good terms. Whatever, that was still her lover, that was still her boyfriend. They were still in a relationship. Just because they might have been having a fight at the moment doesn't mean that there wasn't any love there, and that is hard, and it's very hard to process. And as I said, we know that this is not just isolated. These are just being highlighted because of the sensationalism of the Karen Reed trial. And then out of the same county, out of Canton, you have this young woman who had a whole life and a whole baby's life ahead of her being ended and covered up by the police department within their own corruption. The corruption just keeps adding up. And like on a personal note, in my own small town in Ohio, just to say how corrupt I really do think, and a lot of us think, not every police officer, not every investigator, but we have them, and it's hard because, like, what happened with me wasn't even that the person was doing any kind of a cover up or anything like that, but a couple years ago, my car was broken into. And so, of course, I called the police, and they showed up. They were taking it was in the middle of winter in Ohio. It was February, and he's just taking regular pictures with his cell phone. And I got excited because I looked in the bottom of my passenger seat, and there was a cigarette. I don't smoke. Nobody who goes in my car smokes. No one in my family smokes. And I was like, and there hadn't even been anybody else in the car besides me, for a couple weeks. So I was like, this belongs to the person who did this to my car. This is the car thief. You can get the DNA testing done, and you'll catch the perp. And the police officer who was on scene, he took a tissue out, and it was a crumbled tissue. It looked like it was clean, just crumbled, and picked it up and wrapped it in the tissue. And he was like, I'll take it with me, but he was like, I just want you to know, I don't want you to get your hopes up. We're probably not going to DNA process this cigarette butt. What do you mean? You'll be able to find the person who did this. You have the DNA. It was in their mouth. Nobody else smokes. I told you all this. And he told me, he was like, well, this isn't a high priority crime. There was no loss of life, which, okay. But also, he said, and this is what got to me, is he goes, and you're not a high value citizen. I'm not valuable and important enough for you to do a thorough investigation and have direct evidence get processed. Well, if I'm not valuable to you, then my tax dollars aren't valuable to you. See if I vote for your tax levies, because you're not protecting me, apparently. Only valuable people are worth that kind of time to the police. And don't get me wrong, I know that there's a lot going on. They got a lot happening, but I live in a small town in Ohio, a conservative, very conservative small town in Ohio. Our police force is well funded, it's well staffed. There's a lot more support for our police than, say, the Cleveland police or the Los Angeles police departments. We have support. We have time. We do not have a lot of crime. They have the time to deal with me, or should, in my opinion. And yet I was told that I wasn't going to get that. And again, that was very hurtful. I was very offended and upset by that. But imagine being the Birchmores. where it's like our daughter and future grandchild are not with us anymore because you didn't value her life. So when we see where citizens are not valued, even John O'Keefe, one of their part of their brotherhood who wasn't on the inn, wasn't worth a good investigation, wasn't worth a proper, detailed, professional investigation, where the Birchmores were not given a decent, proper investigation, and that it took them hiring their own pathologist and examiner to get some real answers. It should be unfathomable, but I think that we're just all like, is there a way to stop it from happening? Right? So, again, it's a lot of sadness, it's a lot of hardships, it's a lot of frustration. And, we all want truth, we all want justice. I don't want somebody wrongly accused. I believe Karen Reed is not the perpetrator in John O'Keefe's passing. Uh, but if the police did their jobs, if the police put work into their, or put effort into their work, sorry, I got that switch. If they saw the citizens and denizens of their cities as valuable, maybe we'd have more justice. If they were truthful about facts and not just trying to, cover up for themselves, maybe we wouldn't be in these situations. Like, it's negligence and annoyance at the very least, and it's disgusting and immoral at at the highest. Just, that's all I got for you guys today. I know I rambled a lot in this one. I know there was a lot of dark information. Tell me what you think of these things. Am I just looking at this all wrong? That, maybe there's somebody who's like, listen, this chick was just, she was flaunting her stuff and she got her gots. If you think that, you can say that in the comments. Like, I'm not going to stop you, but maybe therapy. Maybe therapy. But yeah, if you've watched the Karen Reed trial, tell me what you think. And we can all hopefully, maybe the more investigations we have, we'll have an actual better tomorrow.